So many people wait for retirement to buy their new toy, to buy that luxury coach, or even to expand on their house, only to figure out by the time they actually get there, they're too tired, they're too worn out, it costs too much money, and they're stressing out each and every day on the added expense. Yes, in fact, I know numerous people, including myself, who have regretted some big purchases later on in life. I want to share some of the big 5 regrets that many retirees have, and it's a common denominator. While many retirees do truly enjoy some of these aspects, unfortunately, it leaves many others regretting it simply because of the cost and the extra added commitment. Welcome back to the hustle, everybody, and welcome back to the grind, and welcome and glad to have you back on this glorious day. It's such another beautiful morning. Let's head on down, grab a coffee. But the most important thing is talking about some of those big regrets that people have had over the years. You know, you wait for many years, you think, okay, you have this dream, 55, 60, 65, maybe 70, you're going to retire, and you think, okay, now's the time to enjoy. I'm going to buy that RV, that boat, possibly even buy that dream home of ours. And then all of a sudden you find yourself getting into it and you realize that's not something that you really bargained for. You didn't really think it out all that well. And I've known numerous people along this ways. Let's take this kind of right from the top, because I can speak from experience, either through myself or people I know, that one of the big ones is your dream home. That's one of the biggest expenses. A lot of people believe that that's something that they want to do and add later on in life when they figure that they've got it covered. They've got their finances in order. You know, they've been living in this moderate house all their life, and they figure, you know what, they've worked really hard. Let's do this for ourselves. Let's buy ourselves that dream house that we've always dreamed about. But unfortunately, what ends up happening is quite often you get into it, there's added expenses, and unfortunately at a time later on in life, particularly for many who retire, realize that those added expenses, work, maintenance, bigger yards, trees to prune, more cleaning, high windows, all of those things that you really don't aspire to do, unfortunately are now a reality of everyday life. Now, unfortunately, close friends of ours, and I think about this, they were just such people. There were some friends of ours, they were a little bit older, they're about 10 years older than us, and they were in that such predicament. They always lived in this 900 square foot house. It was really just the two of them. They didn't have any kids, but they thought, you know what, it's time to do something better for ourselves. Let's buy that dream home, and they wanted to upgrade to a 2,800 square foot house. Not because they thought, you know, they were better than the Joneses or doing any of that, because these people were pretty well grounded. It wasn't about that at all. In fact, it was just this feeling of, you know, almost like a trophy, a mantelpiece that, you know, made them feel like, hey, you know, we've accomplished something, and now let's treat ourselves and live in this nice, beautiful house. Well, they did that. And they were into retirement, and they had this big house, they had it built, it took them, they had to hire architects. They got this house built for them, and it ended up costing a fortune. But after 2 years, they finally got the house, they moved in, they transitioned over, and they loved it for about the first 8 months. And then as time went on, things started to change. They started to realize the additional workload that it took to keep that house in place. The extra taxes. Now what they didn't realize is utilities were a little bit higher, because every time you turn on a set of lights, all the pot lights on the outside light up. There's more power consumption. There's more heating and gas. And there was all of those other extremities like taxes, you know, property taxes. How we all get charged. A bigger house in a better neighborhood, you're going to pay more taxes. And that's exactly what they discovered. Now that took a much bigger bite out of their income. And unfortunately, this was a reality, but it got worse. See, because unfortunately, about 13, 14 months in, the husband, which I won't mention his name, unfortunately had a major stroke. Now, fortunately, the good news is he survived. The unfortunate news, though, is he was no longer able to help out around the house. So now they had this massive house. You know, there's the older lady who's the friend. The wife really didn't leave the wife much help when the husband, of course, now was resigned to a rocking chair and really couldn't help her out around the house very much. And so for months and months, they basically regretted that purchase. Now, anything can happen at any point, and, you know, they could have easily lived to 90 in good health, but it's still the reality of the extra financial burden placed on them just because that purchase of that house. They went bigger, it cost them a lot more money. So it's an unfortunate reality. And a lot of people end up regretting that bigger house because, as they say, most people end up downsizing. But there are some that do decide they need that dream home and they want to expand and and do something special. So another one that I've come across in my experience is boats. Boats. Row, row, row the boat. Hey, I'm not much of a singer, am I? But anyhow, boats. I've got a boat too, a smaller one, and we've had it for years and we really enjoyed it. But a lot of people wait. They wait till later on. They think, I'm going to go out fishing, or I'm going to go motorboating. I'm going to do whatever. We're going to get out on the water. We're going to really enjoy it. As a matter of fact, I've had boat for years, and we bought it because we had young ones. And so the idea was to get out with the family on a small little ski boat, and we'd spend weeks on the lake. And we did that. We did that for years. But even I can attest, the reality is, after a while, you start to find out that it costs a lot of money to maintain a boat. And while in the moment, the boat is the best place you can possibly be. Trust me when I can say this. If you've ever had a boat and you've ever been able to spend some time out on a lake and the sun's shining and all the chaos on the beach, then you get on your boat and you sail on out to the middle of the lake and you look back and all that noise, it's all behind you. And being on a boat is absolutely one of the best places. And, for some people, they will continue standing by that and they'll truly believe that the boat is what they live for. If it's a hobby and it's one of your passions, absolutely. But there's a lot of people that just feel like, I just always wanted a boat. And so they go buy a boat. And unfortunately, the reality is they realize that it's expensive to buy, expensive to maintain. Even to put a tank of fuel in a mid-sized ski boat, you're talking about $150 to $200 because the tanks are massive. You're also talking about expensive parts. You ever hit the bottom of the lake with a prop? Now all of a sudden you've got damage to the leg, to the prop that costs thousands of dollars. And then the other aspect, of course, is taking that boat and you've got to winterize it. Most states, most provinces, winter actually means it gets below zero or below freezing. And so what that ultimately yields is huge expense at the end of every year. So it's okay. It's absolutely one of the best things. We've got a boat. We don't use it nearly like we used to. I don't regret it, but I know many people that have regretted it. I know people, friends personally, that regret. They said, I probably shouldn't have ever bought this. It's kind of pointless. And that's not an uncommon theme, because a lot of people believe that, that's what they always wanted. They get into it, and then it's just the cost and the expense, the hassle, storage, and all of that. One thing I'd suggest is, if you want to ever buy a boat, think about maybe tag along. Maybe you have a friend or a family member. Maybe you can spend some time with them, maybe spend a week or a few days out on the lake and kind of understand what it looks like to maintain it, to own it, to operate it, to store it. Also, maybe it doesn't hurt to actually go out and check with one of your local boat stores and ask them how much to winterize and maintain this. What is the average annual cost to own that type of boat, the type of boat you're interested in? Because that's going to give you a much better perspective on the actual cost to own that unit. So anyway, one of the things I've personally seen some regret in people that buy boats, and it's a huge expense, it's a huge commitment, and it's a huge time suck as well as it takes space. But there's other things. There's a third item. Another major regret on purchases for people that go into retirement are also giving large amounts of money to family. Now, that's always a thing, right? I mean, we talk about that, never lend money, just give it. That's always probably the best approach. But unfortunately, I've seen cases where people have bought their young ones who graduated and said, hey, we'll buy you a house. And they buy a house. And then the young one kind of starts to sit on their laurels and realize, hey, I need an extra $5,000. We're a little short. Do you have the money for property tax? Can you help us out, Dad? Or can you help us out, Mom? I know somebody. I have friends like that. We don't really talk about it much, but I see it on the peripheral that they've had struggles with the young ones who they kept helping financially, kept feeding them, and bought them a house. They bought them a car when they were 16. They gave them money as they went. And unfortunately, over time, they become just a little too reliant on this. And that reliance then just sort of saps that drive and that urgency to get out there and hustle and earn your own living. And I've seen that. It really does remove that independence. It really does. And I've seen it time and time again. I've got friends that have lived that. And that's one of the worst things you can do, is give large sums of money. Now, I know with our young ones, sometimes it helps to get them off and running. And maybe like for the first car, for example, have both put some skin in the game. That's the way I like to see it. It's good to help the young ones, which we do all the time. We've got 4, and we've helped each and every one of them major. we've really probably, in some ways, probably overdone it. But in most cases, the belief is, let's both have some skin in the game. You know what? You put some money in, we'll put a little bit of money in. And that way we can both, you can buy that car, we'll help you out, get you started, get you into a better car instead of some kind of old, crappy, unreliable jalopy. But you're going to have some ownership in this, and you're going to have to put some money in, and you're going to have to save up. So just giving money frivolously to family, friends, it's just not necessarily the best approach, because it builds that reliance. And you'll find those people that you constantly give money for, big financial, I'm not talking about go buying a beverage or a dinner, but I'm talking large sums of money. There becomes this reliance. Okay, how about another one? Another big one that I talk about, that I've seen it, I've witnessed. How many of you, come on, let's be honest, have bought an RV and used it 5 or 6 times and never ever used it again? It's probably sitting in the back 40 of some storage yard, as many are. You know, we have an RV, we've had it for a while. We've always enjoyed camping, but a lot of that was driven by, you know, having the young ones. That was same as the boat. But also same as the boat, it takes lots of place to store. You need a lot of room and real estate to store that boat. You also have to think about the cost to winterize, because most RVs have water that you run. You hook up the water lines and you can feed water through the system, unless you're, you know, doing something like a tent trailer. But if you're talking about an RV full size, like Class A motorhome or something, you're gonna have water lines, you're gonna have to winterize it, you're gonna have to put the environmentally friendly, non-toxic antifreeze through it every winter to make sure that you don't have frozen lines and damage come the winter time. There's the, you know, if it's an RV, you've got mechanical things to think about, the engine, oil changes, transmission services, just like any other vehicle. Even if you're talking about a large, say a fifth wheel, you've still got all those winterization aspects you've got to deal with, and that all costs money. And I can't tell you how many people I've heard, family and friends, even some good friends of ours that we hadn't seen in for a while. We kind of ran into them here recently, and we said, hey, have you been out camping recently? We know they bought a trailer years ago, and we used to go camping with them. And then unfortunately, they just said, well, you know, life, right? You know, overtime at jobs, you know, their kids started growing up, lives change, jobs change, everybody's going different ways. Next thing you know, the camper is just sitting. And so when you're young, it always seems like a great thing, and certainly it is. It's a great way to bond. It's a great way to enjoy the outdoors, and we did that for years. And I could honestly tell you, it is one of the best ways to bond with the family and enjoy the, you know, what the world has to offer. Hit the road, go to some new spots that you haven't seen, go to the backwoods and really enjoy that. And we did. That was something that we really enjoyed over the years. But there is a little bit of a reality that once, particularly as, you know, you get older, and even more so as you retire, there's less people to bond with. You know, not everybody's in the same mood. You know, maybe the husband decides, hey, why don't we go camping? Instead, maybe the wife says, well, we need to go shopping. We need a new couch for the living room. And so sometimes priorities shift. And then it becomes a conversation of cost, maintenance, storage, and of course, priorities. And priorities change. I've seen it. I know lots of people like that. Even for us, you know, we had a camper or trailer. We loved it. And then we sort of outgrew it. We built a little cabin in the woods. We used that for a while. Then we moved on, and then we bought another RV to take us out to the backwoods, and we enjoy it, but I'll be honest, we don't use it nearly as much as we should either. So you definitely get an understanding. Talk to these RV places, understand how much for winterization. Most people end up eventually just winterizing it themselves. It's not overly complex, but it's just labor intensive. Again, it takes storage, and sometimes if you don't have that room, a lot of jurisdictions, I know where we live, we have neighbors that often call on. I've seen it. I've had other neighbors that have tried to park their trailers on their driveway, fully on their driveway, but bylaws state that you can't within or outside of the summer season. And so what it forces people to do is essentially park it, unless you know somebody with a farm or a big acreage, you basically have to pay for storage. Now you're talking, you know, anywhere from $50 to $100 a month just to park it in some grassy lot and accumulate a bunch of rodents and mice. So that's the drawback. The win, of course, is the romantic side of this, you know, but maybe the best approach is if you have a little bit of an inkling that you want to, you know, get into RVing, maybe rent one. There's lots of those, you know, RV America or whatever camping companies that, you know, can rent you an RV, you know, a class B, a class C, what, I don't even know what they're called, but smaller motorhomes, and you can go out and enjoy it. And maybe that's the only fix you need, or maybe you'll start to understand really what it means, because unless you've ever had the opportunity to pull the black water, or you've had a leak and you've pulled the cap off of your drain, and unfortunately the valve wasn't closed fully from the previous time, you've quickly then realized what it's like to go camping with an RV. Anyway, you ever see that movie RV? That is classic, and that just paints the picture. Running into things, driving something you're not used to, mechanical damage, sewage, you name it. It's a whole lot of fun. But anyway, all jokes aside, there are regrets for some people. It is a lot of fun. We've always enjoyed it. But I've seen people, other people absolutely regret buying one because they simply ran out of the priorities and the effort or the want to even go and use it. Now there is another big one, and I'll be honest, and I'm going to be perfectly frank with you. I truly believe almost everybody who buys this will truly regret it. Those other items, some may regret, some may not. Some may regret buying a boat or an RV, and others may not. They might say, we use it a lot, and that's great. It's just one of the bigger regrets. Same thing with lending money out or even buying that dream home. Many people love it, and so it can be one of those mixed experiences. But the last one, absolutely without a doubt, is one that many people just clearly can get on board with and agree with this, because I've experienced this. Have you ever been to Mexico, or you've gone to the Dominican Republic, or you've gone to some hot spot? Next thing you know, you've got somebody fast talking you, hey, come on down. We're going to give you a little talk. You just got to listen to a 5-minute presentation, and then we can get you in and we'll give you free tickets to this show, or we'll get you free drinks, or we'll do this. They'll promise these gifts. You just got to listen to this little presentation for 5 or 10 or 15 minutes. Just a small deal, minor detail. Trust me when I say don't ever fall for that. I've seen it in Vegas and Mexico, you name it. I've been cornered, and then it is very hard to get away. So it's regretful, not only from the experience and getting caught up in a corner, but it's absolutely regretful getting wrangled into a timeshare conversation. Because timeshares, those people are aggressive. Then you say no, then they beat and they waste time and they stall, and then they beat around the bush, and then no, you're like, no, just let me out, give me my gift. And they say, okay, no problem. And then all they do is bring the manager over, and then the manager tries to talk you over. And then he tries to, and you just keep saying no. And then eventually, okay, no problem. We promise you that. Then they send you to they say, okay, go over there to the bell clerk over there. They'll hook you up. They'll get you your tickets. You go over there, and then there's a manager that steps in front of them and says, oh, okay, but we can do this special deal for you. We can even knock 20% off. And then you're saying, no. And then finally the clerk themselves, okay, but you sure we can even get you this really ultra low cost? You only have to commit to this instead. They grind you down to a nub. And so the whole conversation that started as supposed to be a 15-minute presentation often ruins 4 hours of your day. And when you go away for a place like Mexico, your time's limited. You might only be there for a week. And when you're burning off a day or a good half a day listening to this nonsense, it's actually very regretful. But more importantly, I actually know people that actually succumbed and bought timeshares. Timeshares means ultimately that you have just that, timeshares. It's an investment. You spend X amount of dollars. You have a time slot for every given year or every couple of years, whatever it is for said type of facility, hotel, motel, whatever, you name it. And usually it's talked about premium luxury, but ultimately it's a way for them to fund and build these facilities, and you're going to pay for it, which is fine. And some people find timeshares okay, but for the most part, almost everybody I spoke to who got actually wrangled, I have a friend of mine that actually their parents got sucked into one, and they were trying to do everything. They're even trying to sell it on Facebook Marketplace, trying to dump it, trying to unload it, because now they're committed. Every year they've got to pay, it's not a huge amount of money, but a couple grand or a few $1,000s, and they constantly have to spend, and now they have to use it, and they can't trade their time, and it never really works out. And it's just one of these situations where they just don't use it. The time slots aren't necessarily cohesive. They don't want to necessarily go back to the same place. Plus, you're always on the hook for buying air only. Now, air only sometimes to like Mexico's and those are usually more expensive than getting an all-inclusive package deal. So now you're actually spending more to go to a place that you can barely even make it happen anyway. So many people end up just regretting it. So those are clearly some of the biggest regrets I've either personally experienced or know people that have experienced in a big, big way. But again, as always, everybody, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. I'm glad to have each and every one of you. I really feel like we're building a wonderful, in-kind little community here, and I love chatting. And I'm glad I can be of help to some of you who do find my daily chats definitely invigorating, if nothing else. But anyway, don't forget to share, like, and subscribe to the channel. We'll talk to you all real soon, everybody. Have a great day. Bye-bye.